What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 4 top-of-the-route moves that all wide receivers need to learn. We're going to be talking about when to use these different moves, and then obviously the technique behind each one. So I hope this video helps you guys out, but also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you would like 200-plus route running, press release, catching drills, everything wide receivers should be doing on the field, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. It's 8 weeks of daily on-field drills that you guys can do mapped out with sets and reps put into a schedule to follow. So check out that very first link in the description below. Again, fellas, if you're interested, let's get started with this video. So the first move that we are going to be talking about here is going to be a rocker step where you are stacking this DB in press coverage. So this wide receiver, the quarterback is actually to the right side of the field here. We got a DB who's lined up in like outside shade press coverage, but I want you to watch what happens and how he's able to use this rocker step, okay? So let's play at full speed. So he comes off the ball, he attacks the DB, but the DB doesn't really keep his leverage, which allows this wide receiver to take an outside release, and that's where that rocker step is going to be set up. So a rocker step is essentially like, it's like a 1-2 at the top of the break. You want to step in the direction you are going first. So if you could use this, honestly, I would say the 4 routes that I like to use this on would be like a 10-yard out, 10 to 12-yard dig, a post, or a corner. Those are probably my favorite ones to use it on. There are probably other situations where you could use it, but those are the 4 that I like to use it on. So if you're using it on a dig, you are breaking to the right, in this case being on the left side. So you would step with your right foot first. The goal is to be able to, I am faking like I am running an out route, right? And then if you were running an out route, you would be faking like you were running a dig route. So you watch film of guys like Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson. This is a move that they use almost on every single route where they could break off of a single cut. So why does he decide to do this? So normally what we would do versus outside shade press, and we have to run an inside breaking route, our goal would be, okay, I'm going to attack his leverage to the outside. The goal when you attack a DB's leverage is to get him to keep his leverage, right? You attack him, and then he starts to keep his leverage to the outside. Because when he lines up like this pre-snap, his goal is to prevent the outside route. Don't let this wide receiver take an outside release. Force everything to the inside where he probably has help. So wide receiver knows that. He comes off the ball, and he attacks him, but this DB doesn't really keep his leverage. He almost like shades to the inside, giving the wide receiver this outside release. So as a wide receiver, like, you have a plan off the line of scrimmage. You want to execute the plan, but sometimes the DB might take it away. So if he takes it away, we got to react. And I would say 60% of the position is having a plan. 40% of the position is being able to react and react quickly. So this wide receiver ends up taking the outside release. So when we take the outside release on an inside breaking route, my main goal is to stack this DB. What stacking the DB means is where you get over the top of him to where he is trailing your back hip. So that's where his eyes are going to be. He's going to be looking at your hips, and that's where this rocker step comes into play. So I like this rocker step when we have a DB stacked. When we have him stacked and we got to run a corner, a post, a dig, an out route. That's when I love to use it the most. Now, could you use it against off coverage? Absolutely. Like, let's say he has to run this dig route and the DB is like outside shade, but he's like 8 yards off. You could run at him and do the same type of rocker step. You step with the left foot, break with the right, and then come back underneath on the dig. So you could use this against off coverage, zone coverage, press coverage, but only when we have him stacked, okay? So this is really a move you could use in any given situation. So what's the mechanics off of it, right? So like I said, when we have a DB stacked, his eyes are going to be watching my hips. Same thing when he's in off-man coverage. He's going to be looking at the hips, because a DB's mindset is, if I'm looking at a wide receiver's hips, the hips aren't going to move. A wide receiver likes to sell the route with his shoulder and his head. That's why DBs are taught eye discipline. You don't want to be looking high because the receiver will lie to you up here with the shoulders and the head. I think as a receiver, that's false. I think we could sell this movement with my hips, and that's what you want to do with this rocker step. So on the first step of this movement isn't like the most like over-exaggerated step. It's a hard cut. You're planning hard. You want to keep it inside of your frame because the goal with the first part of this cut, that's the step in the direction we are going, is to be explosive and push to sell the opposite cut, which would be with the left foot. So he goes hard cut with the right, pushing and stepping with the left. And you see how his hips and shoulders turn. He's not just leaning with his head and shoulders. He's actually throwing his hip. Something that I'll tell my wide receivers to do on this move is you want to try to take your belly button and turn it towards the sideline. And when you turn that belly button towards the sideline, you want to maintain a good foot strike position. You don't want the toe to open up. You want to keep your toe pointed forward, positive shin angle, so we could sell the movement, but at the same time, because I have this shin angle, I could push, I could drive out and get some separation. So this rocker step is a great move to use on on any one of those four routes, what I would say, if you're going to use it on an out route or a dig, make the cut a little bit more like a lateral, if you will. But if you're going to be using it on like a post route, when you do this rocker step, if you step with the right foot, your next cut should be at like this type of angle. It should be bam, bam at a 45. If it's like a dig, it should be bam, bam. More lateral, because you have to get 90 degrees on the finish of the route. Okay, so that's a rocker step. Great move that you could use on any one of those four routes that we mentioned. Let's play this again full speed. Great job reacting and then using this move at the top to sell this route. So now, next move we're going to be talking about here is going to be a throw-by move. So what is a throw-by move? So this is something that you could use in that same situation we just covered, where you take an outside release versus inside shade press, or like the DB showed outside shade and held inside like we saw in the last example, or what have you. Okay, so a throw-by move is great to use on, I honestly personally like it on those same, honestly you could use probably on any route, to be honest with you. It just kind of depends on the situation. Anything but probably like a fade or maybe a deep post. Okay, so let's play this full speed, then we'll break it down. So he takes an inside release on an outside breaking route. So I like the throw by when we release opposite of the break point, or of the break on the route, right? So I like the throw by when we take an inside release and we have to run to the outside. I like the throw by when we take an outside release and have to run to the inside, right? And it's all based on the DB's leverage. So this wide receiver, we got like a DB who's outside shade, I would say, protecting the outside, and he has to run a 10-yard out. So he knows coming off the ball that it's probably unlikely that I'm going to give a hard fake to the inside and take an outside release. A disciplined DB, more often than not, is not going to give up the outside release when he has outside leverage. That's his sole purpose in life. Protect the outside and force you to the inside where his help is. So as a wide receiver, I can't be messing around and trying to force this outside release, running into all this hand contact, screwing up the timing with my QB, and getting forced all the way to the sideline. So if I do break on an out, a corner, a comeback, or just running a fade, I don't have that much space because the DB forced me to the outside. He protected his leverage, okay? So I take what he gives me. I take the inside release. Now, obviously, just like the last example, our goal against press coverage every single time should be, I want to stack him, because that's the easier break, right? If you got a DB stacked and he is trailing you, that should be easy freaking money. You should be able to get separation on that all day. But if we can't stack him, maybe the DB's faster than me, maybe he just, maybe he plays this thing well, right? I still got to have a plan at the top of the break. Like I said, my plan should be to stack him, but like, what's 40% of the position? Being able to react. So if I can't stack him, I got to still be able to react. I got to still be able to get in and out of this break. And that's where this throw by comes into play. So the throw by, you are usually dropping your hips on the break. It is very rare that you can cut off of one foot and throw by at the same time. Maybe on like a shorter route where you're running, like let's say, for example, we had outside shade press. You were right here as a receiver and you had to run like a 5-yard out. You could probably burst up to 5, get him to overcommit and plant off of 1 foot and slip under. But 10, 12 yards downfield, you're most likely going to have to drop your hips when it's a 90-degree cut like an out or a dig. But when you drop your hips, you're going to take the arm to the side of the break, or to arm to wherever the DB is, and you're going to be violent with the hips. We're selling fade. Our goal is to get this DB to flip his hips, and when you put the brakes on, we swat him by. Now, this wide receiver in this example gets a lot of success on this because he swats by, but he swats by on like the back of the elbow of this DB. I'm not mad at that spot. I think you will have more success if you swat by on the back of the hip or the back of the shoulder, because I feel like that's obviously a bigger area of the DB, and I feel like it's easier to control him there. Sometimes if you try to swat by on the elbow, you might miss because, an elbow is a lot smaller than his back or his hip or his shoulder, right? But again, it can still work, and it's still a great way to get separation. You just have to make sure that swat is violent. Now, a lot of people, whenever I talk about this throw by, will say, oh, this is a push-off. This is a flag. You can't do this. That's pass interference. It's not. Guys, maybe it's pass interference if you're running and you just like full-blown push the DB in the back. But if he's getting hands on us and it's contact and you're just swatting his hands, they're not going to call that, fellas. That's just hand fighting between a wide receiver and a DB, and that is totally fine. So a hip drop move is a great move to use at the top of the route when you release opposite of the route. So you take an inside release on an outside breaking route or an outside release on an inside breaking route, and the DB plays it well. You can't stack, so we throw by and slip back underneath. Because again, we need spacing on the play. A quarterback would rather have you take an inside release and give you all of this space to throw him open than force an outside release and be, oh, great, you're outside of him, but you got 2 yards to the sideline. That's almost an impossible throw for him. So let's break this down. Let's play this thing full speed one more time. Great job throwing by and getting separation at that break. Okay, so now the next move we're going to be talking about here is going to be a peek back move. So a peek back move is something that a lot of wide receivers don't necessarily use that often because they don't know the proper technique of it and they don't know the best situation to use it. So this receiver is going to be using this on a comeback route. I like a peek back personally on a comeback, an out route, a stop route. You could use it on a dig route in some cases in the red zone, but honestly, I like this peek back the best, fellas, when you guys are in the red zone because it's another way to sell vertical, okay? So I'm going to talk about why in a second, but let's play this full speed. So this wide receiver gives a move, peeks back to sell the fade, and then is able to put the brakes on and get in and out of this route. So let's talk about why this works, right? So he comes off the ball. Everybody knows that on, like, let's say you're just running like a basic, 18 back to 16 yard comeback, right? All the way up to 18 yards on that comeback. What are you trying to make the DB think you're doing? Whether he's in zone or press, what are you trying to make him think we're doing? Running a fade, right? We're trying to get him to open up his hips, go vertical with me, and then I put the brakes on. And how I do that is by running hard, running in full stride, committing my upper body, like my body language to the fade. All of those things will get that DB to bail out of there, right? But on the goal line, if that's your only plan of action, you're just running as hard as you can. The DB's like, man, I'm not going to bite. I'm not going to fall for that because I'm just going to let you run out the back of the end zone. He'll just hold his leverage inside and he'll be able to make a play on it. So what can you threaten him with on the goal line? And that is going to be a goal line fade. We look over my inside shoulder to sell like we got this goal line fade coming over the top. Maybe this DB overreacts a little bit. Then I can put the brakes on and get out. Now, when we do this peek back, there's a couple mistakes that guys will make. Number one, they won't hold their eyes there. What they'll do is they'll keep their head down, and then at the last second, they'll just like throw their eyes back to the quarterback. Guys, that's not enough to sell with this DB. That's not enough to get him to be overcommitted, get his eyes high, and think that a fade ball is coming. You have to hold your eyes there. You have to keep your arms pumping. You got to make sure that we are running in full stride, and you have to hold your eyes to the quarterback. You cannot just do it at the last second. You can't look back and then drop your eyes either. You have to hold your eyes there. Now, when guys do this, when they hold their eyes, especially when they get a helmet on with full pads, their chest stands straight up in the air. They almost lean backwards and they take all these choppy steps. That also doesn't sell fade, and that also doesn't make the DBs think you're running a fade. Guys, it is a glance. I call this a peek back. It is a glance over the inside shoulder. You're just literally simply turning your head, looking over the inside shoulder so we can maintain good pad level and maintain some good speed to sell this thing even more. So I'm going to play this full speed again. Like I said, I like this against maybe an inside shade press guy, outside release, selling the fade on a comeback, an out route, possibly a dig route, or maybe just a stop route where you put the brakes on. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job peeking back to get that DB to jump and then winning on that comeback route. All right, fellas. So now next example we're going to be talking about here, I would refer to this cut as almost, I would call it like a box cut, if you will, or maybe like a fake throw by, that throw by move that we talked about in the second example of this. But we're going to break it down and we'll talk about it and why I call it those two things, okay? So this wide receiver comes off the ball, or tight end, I should say, puts the brakes on, acts like he's slipping under a DB, and then makes this catch. So I would consider this maybe a fake throw by or a box cut, okay? So now, when you got a DB who's lined up like outside shade off man, right? So he's off, he's about 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards away, and you have to run like a 10-yard out route. How would you do that? Would you try to just run around him and get outside of him? No, because remember, we talked about this. If he's outside leverage, his goal is to protect the outside. Don't let the wide receiver get there. So force everything inside and protect the leverage. So as a wide receiver to get separation, we want to attack his inside shoulder and his inside hip. My goal is to try to get him to flip open or just make him think that I'm running some version of a vertical route, maybe a deep post, maybe like a seam, maybe a skinny post, or maybe just a straight up fade, right? So when I get to the break point, my goal would be to slip under him. I'd put the brakes on, I'd slip underneath him, and I got all this space for my QB. So if I'm running a dig route, and I only like this on a dig route, fellas, because I feel like on an out route, usually that is not a late throw. You could use this on a 90-degree cut. You could use this on an out route, absolutely. But it's very, very rare that a quarterback is going to be throwing an out route second read late. It's very rare. Like maybe on like a flood concept where he's sprinting out and we have like a 10 to 12 yard out, we have 5 yard flat and then a fade from the outside and the quarterback's looking 5 yard out to you. Maybe you have a little bit more time. But if it's a timing out route, you cannot use this, fellas. So what we're trying to sell is like we're slipping under him. So this wide receiver puts the brakes on and gives a little jab to the DB's like blind spot, is leverage, whatever it is, faking like he's throwing by to get him to hesitate, and that creates a little more separation to the inside. How you could run this dig too, like you remember that rocker step that we talked about? You could attack this DB, try to widen him, give him a rocker step, and then break on it, but it's just another way to run the route. It's another creative way to run the route to make it look like you're slipping under on an out route. So the way I would teach this, now, Hockenson makes this break, like he kind of does this in 3 steps. I call this a box cut sometimes because I feel like it's easier to teach in 4 steps because how many corners are there in a box, right? There's 4 corners. So I teach receivers to run this in 4 steps. It could be done in 3 steps. I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm just saying this is probably an easier way for you to think of it. But I say you want to snap down in the direction that you are going first. So like, let's say you are going to the inside. I would teach my wide receivers to snap down with their right foot, plant with their left, cut off the right, and then jab with the left. So you would snap down right, left, and then you would throw almost like a crossover with the second right, left. I know that's kind of weird to think about. It's kind of maybe a lot. Maybe some of you are getting it, and that's great. But that's how I would teach this move, just to give us a little bit more control and balance at the break. Sometimes when you try to do 3 steps, you can rush it and maybe not threaten the blind spot as more, but you snap to slow yourself down, then you cross over to sell to that blind spot. So that's a great move. I call it a box cut, fake throw by, however you guys want to think of it, but I love it on an inside breaking route when we have outside shade off man. Could also use this against press man, like that first example that we talked about. You could attack him off the line, take the inside release, put the brakes on, give him a jab to the blind spot, and then cut to the inside. Just gives you more space rather than just taking off and running. So let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job by Hockenson putting the brakes on, selling to that blind spot, getting space, and winning over the middle. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like an 8-week wide receiver on-field workout schedule, 200-plus wide receiver route running drills, press release drills, catching drills, everything you need, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that, fellas. I'll see you guys next time.